Hello everyone, hello and welcome. We're keeping fairly well. It's Black Shadow here. As I'm sure you'll be able to tell from the title of this video, what the main topic of this is going to be, and kind of my thoughts on Resident Evil 4, and an opportunity for me to kind of, respond to some of the comments and discussions that have been had around my thoughts of this game so far. It's not trying to be overly negative, but I figured I would give myself a platform to kind of try and respond, given that I've had to do a lot of this series in advance. Also, this is going to act as a very pseudo quick update as well, let you know what's going on the channel. We are still looking to upload 2 videos of Resident Evil 4 Remake every day, which means the basically plan is the rest of this month is going to be the rest of the hardcore run, as well as a little bit of mercenaries, and then I do intend to do the professional run of this game, which will be starting in May. It's all going to be a little bit squeezed though. Sorry, there's no particularly fancy stuff behind me, because I am probably going to be moving home in about 6 weeks. It has been pretty breakneck speed, having been on holiday, literally come back, barrel through this game a little bit because I had the podcast with the Inferno Syndicate on Resident Evil 4. That was late last night, so I had to get a lot of this series done early and get it pre-recorded, which I don't particularly like doing. I like doing these as I go, give me more of a chance to kind of respond and reflect with you guys and whatever else. So I have to kind of condense my thoughts into thought packages in the time, as well as little bits and pieces. And yeah, a little bit of time crunch. Maybe that might have affected my view on a couple of thoughts on the game, perhaps, but regardless. So that's how we stand. Resident Evil Remake 4 Remake, pretty much the end of May, and we'll work it out from there. So, the main reason for this video, and the reason I'm putting this together, is that I've had some comments and discussions from folks about thoughts that maybe I have been unfair to this game, and that I've come into it with some kind of preconceived negative feelings that I was refusing to shake. Now, that in itself is going to be a subjective take, and it's obviously going to depend on what you think about this game. But I want to take this to kind of make a few things clear. I'm going to try and keep things not particularly spoilery, because obviously the series is still being uploaded, so I'm not going to talk specifically about things happening like the village section. There's the whole rest of it to go for, but I want to make a few things clear right now. First things first, I do not hate this game. Not remotely. I really like this game. I think it's great. There is a lot of amazing stuff that Capcom have done with this. I think for the price of paying, you're getting a fantastic package. It plays well. The expansions of plot and story and characters, and the expansion of the game is generally really good. I think for people that have, obviously, I think if you've never played the original, then maybe you're going to be slightly inclined to like it even more. It's a fantastic game. This game, come the end of the year, is going to be shortlisted and in the conversation for Game of the Year. I don't necessarily know if it's going to win it. You could debate maybe whether a remake of a game from 20 years ago should be winning a Game of the Year. That's its own sort of conversation. I'm not even going to remotely get involved in that. Not my problem. But I don't want people, first of all, to think that I hate this game, because I don't. I think it's a really good game. I feel like I have to say that to kind of quantify, certain bits and pieces. And I found that on the podcast I did last night. I was having to do that a little bit. I don't want people to think that I hate this game, because I don't. I think it's a great game. Now, obviously, that's not necessarily what the conversation was about. The thought was that maybe I had been negative towards this game throughout the series. First of all, there was no intention to do so. If I felt that I was being overly negative, then I apologize if you felt that, and that wasn't the intention. But it's a bit complicated for me, this sort of situation I've got this game. As I mentioned, I had to play this game pretty heavily in advance. And I maybe slightly regret the fact that I played this immediately on hardcore. I don't always think playing a game on the hardest difficulty available is always the best experience. I've said that before. But the simple truth of the matter is that, again, having been out the country for 2 weeks and the fact that I'm going to be moving fairly shortly, I simply don't have time to play this game 3 times. And considering that this run took me, about 25 hours in total, I don't have time to do that 3 times. I want to do professional because I think it'll be a good spin. We'll do professional as vanilla, as I usually do, and put myself through that hell. But I just don't have time to play it 3 times. So I had to do it hardcore, had to kind of time crunch it a little bit, and maybe that affected my thoughts a little bit on certain parts of the game. That's fine. But I don't believe that anything that I said, that I have said so far in the series, with my thoughts of this game, are that unfair. And to be fair, a lot of the things that I've pointed out are minor things, because overall, the game has been really good and really solid. One of the things I want to talk about, in making mention, for example, is say like there was a conversation about like the challenges, and the fact that I wasn't particularly positive to all of them. And the reason that is because I am not positive in all of them. I think some of the challenge stuff is really cool. You know, obviously bringing back the medallions makes logical sense. I think kind of having the mark system where you like get the opportunity to take on sort of like souped up certain enemies, kind of like little special mini bosses, but optional. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a fantastic use of the system, and I kind of wish the game had done more of that. But when you have me go through a section of the game, and the game then goes to, oh hey, do you mind if you want to get do you want to go back through the area you've just gone through and retread it for 5 to 10 minutes and stab some rats? That's bullshit. And I don't feel wrong remotely in suggesting that's bullshit, because it is bullshit. When this game has done a lot of really clever stuff, I think to ask the player to do that multiple times strikes me as kind of lazy and kind of thrown in. There's so many other things you could have done. There's so many things they did do. Again, the special marks, you know, like hunting like the big fish in the lake, you know, which I didn't actually realize was a thing. There's some special stuff later on with kind of little mini bits and pieces. I don't know if there's any of that. You know, the medallions is fine. Sure, what the hell? But that irked me because it's lazy and you can do so much better. It's a minor thing. It shouldn't really particularly take away from the game, but it was just something that, you know, that came up now and again, and it just needed me. And I was like, you know, so be it, fine. I know if it was the right way to do it, so be it. Now, the next point I want to make is that it's a bit awkward for me because, of course, I have been around this series for a long time. I've been playing Resident Evil games. I've been around it for, like, 2 decades. And so it's kind of impossible to go into a game that says Resident Evil without some sort of prior thoughts of what the game may or may not be, or what I think it should or should not be. And I've obviously made those thoughts fairly clear. You know, and again, I'm trying not to prejudge the game, because that's not a fair thing to do, and you need to try and avoid that if you're going to be critical of the game. But I'm also not going to lie to you people, and I'm not going to gaslight you. If I see something which I don't think makes sense in the game and I don't particularly like, I'm going to tell you that I don't particularly like it. And because you should have the freedom to be able to do that as much as being able to say the game is awesome. I also equally think if I'd have just sat around for 20, 25 hours saying, oh, this game is great, it plays really well, I think you guys would have been pretty bored of that too. Now, if you feel I've been overly negative, then again, I'm sorry about that. But if I think something's not quite right and there are things that I wouldn't have done, I will tell you. And if you don't want to hear that, then don't watch the series. That's the only thing I can tell you, because there are going to be things going throughout the rest of the series where I point out and say, you know, there's some things I really, really liked and thought were a lot of fun, but there are other things which I don't think was the right choice. And I will tell you that. And if you don't want to hear them, don't watch, okay? Just don't do it. And save yourself the problem, save yourself the hassle, don't worry about it. Now, I don't think there's anything that I made a point of mentioning. I don't think it was particularly unfair. Again, maybe 1 or 2 things may have been slightly that I was kind of time crunched that might have made me a little bit more sour on a couple bits and pieces. But I do not believe I've been unfair to this game at all. You know, I said this is one of the best games I've played in the Resident Evil series for some time. Like, I really like it, and I have to feel like I have to keep saying that to kind of, you know, to quantify it. But there's a difference between recognizing a game is really good and really well put together, and it kind of totally working for one. And that was, I think, the thing I'll look back at this series as. I think this series is as much kind of like an internal battle and monologue with myself, but almost played out in front of you guys. It's impossible not to play this game and think of 2005. And equally, I also don't think that that is wrong. I think, ultimately, when you call this game Resident Evil 4, you are going to have comparisons to the original game. And I think that is totally fine. I think to ignore the context of that is wrong. And while you shouldn't be guided or blinded by it by any stretch of the imagination, there's a reason why Resident Evil 4 is a very fondly remembered game and was a ton of fun. And when I went into this game, I didn't really care how this game played mechanically, because it was always going to play better than Resident Evil 4. Of course it is. It's been 2 decades of not just advancement by Capcom, not just advancement by gaming, but in technology, in the medium as a whole. Like, it's a world away. Of course this is going to play better, you know, in all sorts of ways. Of course it is. Loads of underhood tweaks, loads of little additions. I think the problem I had going into this is that I do think some of gaming, especially when these big, grand AAA titles, has become a bit homogenized. Like, you know, you've got like the ammo crafting system in this game. Does it really need it? I don't think so. But it's kind of there because it's just kind of the done thing now, and everything's kind of got to have a crafting system and everything, and that's just what it is. That's its own conversation, and I won't get involved on that. The second thing I want to make a mention of is that gaming's changed a lot in 20 years. In how we present stuff, in how we receive stuff, in the world around us. You know, it's a very, very different place than it was back in 2005, and that's fine, and I totally get that, and I'm not going to hold this game, you know, against that. It would be ridiculous too, and you can't really do that. But the problem I've got, and had at the end of the village sections, while this game had performed really, really well and had been a really, really smooth experience, is that it was a really, really smooth experience. That was kind of my issue with the game going into the village. At that point of going through the area is that after the village section, you know, and obviously the opening skirmish and events there, which, you know, helps that it's like one of the most iconic sections in, like, you know, survival horror video gaming, is it felt the game had been in a bit of a holding pattern since then, and it was like kind of being a little bit unambitious, but still being really, really good experience at the same time, which is very fascinating. The game's able to do that. Now, you could say it's unabashed. Look, Leon there is like, he's defending a chainsaw with a knife. I mean, isn't that crazy? I mean, it is crazy. You can debate whether that's a good thing or not, but I mean, so whatever else. But that's what I'm trying to say here, and my thoughts to it, is that fun is a very subjective thing, and believe me, I was having fun playing this game. And I know there was a comment somewhere suggesting that it didn't sound like it was. I was, 100%. If I wasn't enjoying this game, I wouldn't play it, alright? I've too much shit to do. I've got my hands in too many pies. If I was not playing this game, I would say, you know, and I'm not enjoying it, not having fun, I'd say, you know what, I'm not having fun, I'm not going to continue with the series. But I'm enjoying the series, I'm enjoying the game, so I carried on playing it. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff to come, which I thought was really, really good and really entertaining. But problem is, for me, and that I was trying to rectify my own mind, is the fact that this, because you've got such a polished and smooth experience, is to me that kind of limited some of the ground for having those exceptional moments. And it's felt to me at times that the game was kind of either not confident enough to do it, or maybe slightly embarrassed to do it. You know, when we sat down for the shooting range and the shooting gallery, it was great fun, because it was like the game letting its hair down and kind of being a bit more natural amongst itself and just having some fun. And this game, I think, could have benefited from more of that. And that's where I was unfortunate at the end of the village. Really decent experience. I've got nothing really majorly to play about at all. I have nothing majorly to play. As I said, I mean, it's a great game. But I just hadn't... I was just waiting for the game to kind of really take me in and just kind of make me connect emotionally. And at the end of the village, it hadn't done it yet. And I was hopeful that I was going to have that established some point later on. Lewis was a good start, for sure. The Ashley segment coming up later on, I think is really, really good and a lot of fun. But that was where I was at. I just wasn't quite there yet, and I was waiting for the game to really, you know, let me into it. And the problem I had was that as I was exploring the game, you know, and seeing a lot of cool stuff on the surface, you know, I was prepared to kind of poke at the underbelly of this game a bit. And unfortunately, I didn't always like what I saw. And I'm not going to lie to you people. I'm not going to look at something that I see and say, I'm not a big fan of this, and then, you know, ignore it. I'm not going to. Did I go on about it maybe too much of the series? Maybe I did. I don't know. That's going to be subjective. Some people will mind. Some people perhaps won't give a damn. And again, if you feel that way, I'm sorry. And if you keep watching the series and feel I'm still that way, well, I would say it's all pre-recorded, so I can't really edit much about that. And B, if you really don't like it, just stop watching, okay? And I'm sorry for the experience. Now, we'll come back in professional, where I won't be so much critical about the game, but more about like actually playing the game properly, and we can touch upon things then, all right? Okay? Okay. So yeah, that's kind of me giving a bit of voice and thoughts to that. You know, and you know, hopefully you can watch the rest of the series with a bit of a different light and my thoughts to it. It's not me having a go at the game at all. I would never want to do that or try to do that. But I wanted to see what this game's kind of inner soul was. And so word that's been bandied about a little bit, ironically. And it was something that I was conscious about. And I wanted to see, you know, and see how have things changed in 20 years. And yeah, admittedly, I didn't always like what I saw. You know, and that's the weird thing. You know, Resident Evil 2 Remake, I had no issues at all. The one or two issues I had was because I'd seen prior, and I just thought they could do a little bit better, but it's fine, it was no problem. If you've never played if it was a fantastic entry point, it still is a fantastic entry point in the series, I would encourage anyone to give it a spin. The way they did the second run was like, so, whatever. I think they had some time crunch issues, is probably what ended up happening. And then Resident Evil 3 Remake, I was kind of defending that. But it's interesting how, like, you know, Resident Evil 3, you can say, oh, they got rid of the clock tower segment, you know, they're so bad, what a terrible remake. And yet I could sit here and say, well, at the release, they had no mercenaries, they had no separate ways, they had taken out boss fights, they had taken out other sections of the game, like the laser and that, and yet I feel like I'm the arsehole for bringing that up. It's a very fascinating that. Anyways, I've rambled on enough. You know, thank you for spending some time listening to me. I hope you get an understanding of kind of where I'm coming from with this game. Anyway, I just want to reiterate, I do not hate this game. Not remotely. I think it's a great game. But there's a difference between understanding that something is a really good game and being able to offer some thoughts on things that I didn't necessarily like. Also, it's amazing looking at me manually shifting from my inventory here. I still, at this point, is like in episode 4, I hadn't worked out what was sorting was a thing. Man, the dark days. Thank you for watching, everyone. The next video will be going up very shortly. Take care of yourselves, and I'll speak with you all soon.